She was confident that she was going to get that job. She got up real early in the morning. She put on her best corporate attire. She spent plenty of time working on her makeup and fixing up her hair just right. She was going to land that interview. She budgeted plenty of time to get ready, plenty of time to have a cup of coffee in the morning and a full breakfast, plenty of time to get stuck in traffic, plenty of time to hunt for a parking spot at what she was confident would be her new corporate office. She pulled into the parking lot, parked her car, looked in the rearview mirror just to make sure her makeup was good, her hair was still just right. Got out of her car, started walking for the office door with her portfolio in hand. A portfolio full of credentials. She had the academic background, just under a decade of real work experience in the area that she was going to apply for. A portfolio teeming with letters of recommendation. She was going to land that interview. But she walked out of that office not as confidently as she walked in. They told her that they'd give her a call when they had their answer. But she never would get that phone call. She wouldn't get the job. If you were applying for a job and God was the interviewer, and you were applying for a position on His team, what would you say? How would you dress for that interview? What things would be in your portfolio? Would confident be the word that would describe you as you're sitting in that interviewer's seat? Confidence was certainly the word that Jesus used to describe that Pharisee, wasn't it? I mean, this guy exuded confidence, didn't he? This guy, so confident, goes up to the front of church and lets out a prayer not just for the world to hear, but a prayer for the world to see. Where he stands up for everybody to notice and he says, God, thank you for making me so awesome. I'm so thankful I'm not like those messed up people in this world. You know, the robbers, the evildoers, the adulterers, and if that wasn't confidence enough, he then points at somebody there worshiping, or even like this disgusting, despicable tax collector who can't even worship at the front of church. He's got to hang out in the back. Thank you for not making me like that guy. And you wonder for a moment, why would Jesus craft a guy like that as a character in this parable? Well, we got to remember who the context was, or who the audience was. Jesus was talking to people who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everybody else. Jesus was talking to the religiously elite. The people who felt religiously they had it going on. That they looked at their legalistic observance of God's commandments and they felt somehow entitled to God's love, deserving of God's heaven. Deserving not only a seat in church, but a stage upon which they could dance and say, check me out. Look at me. Look at all my trophies. I deserve to be here. I know he's a fictional character, but the heart of a Pharisee is far from fiction. And that Pharisee's prayer is far from fiction too. I don't have to strain my ears too much to still hear that prayer. Before I point the finger and say, yeah, I've heard it prayed by that guy over there. My high and mighty neighbor across the street, they're the kind of person who prays this prayer. No, because when I look at the rearview mirror of God's law, it shows me that I've prayed this prayer. And you've prayed this prayer. The prayer of a Pharisee. Maybe it's when you're scrolling through your news feed, or you turn on the news, or you're reading the paper, and it seems like this world is just completely backwards. It's going to hell in a handbasket. And right when you think that some legislation or some new trend or social movement couldn't get any more completely the opposite of what God says in His Word, we look at things like this and we just respond like, I get it. I mean, I know I have my own problems, but seriously, at least I'm not as messed up as they are. Or maybe it's when you're watching court cases like Harvey Weinstein's, and you think to yourself, yeah, God, I know. I understand that I got my pet sins. But at least I don't do what that guy does. At least I didn't say what she said. At least I'm not as messed up as he is, as broken and sick as she is. But I'll say that prayer in other places too. I'll pray that prayer even here. Because I'll walk into church. We will walk into church. And we'll eye up our pew, the pew that we feel we deserve. Pew that should have our little gold bracketed name on it. The seat of me. A seat that I earned. A seat that I deserve. We sit down and we look at the other people around us to our left and our right, and we start to think to ourselves, man, why can't they get it together? Why can't she be more like me? Why can't he turn his life around? Maybe he should get his life together and then maybe come back to church. Because see, we won't just get legalistic with the people on the outside of our church. The Pharisaical heart, the heart of the Pharisee, well, we'll be like that with each other too, won't we? We play this holier-than-thou game with one another. Who can stand and sing their own praises louder than the other? And the heart of that Pharisee will manifest in other ways too. Ways that you know. And when that heart of that Pharisee gets called out, somebody else is always to blame, right? There's always an excuse. There's always a reason why we resort to pettiness, right? There's always a justifying reason why I can be passive-aggressive with the other people at church. There's always a justifying reason why I can harbor anger and hatred in my heart and feed it and nurture it instead of reconciling in light of 2 Corinthians, right? There's always an excuse because God forbid my Pharisee in my heart would ever pray the prayer, God have mercy on me, a sinner. God have mercy on me, a sinner. That was the prayer of the tax collector. And that was the only prayer that he could pray. God have mercy on me, a sinner. We who are but dust and ashes. There is absolutely no reason within us. There's nothing that I can do, nothing that I can say, nothing that I could put in my portfolio to give me confidence to stand confidently before God. You see, in light of God's law calls it like it sees it, right? We're called sinners because of sin. We are called sinners because of sin. Sins of thought, sins of words, sins of deeds, sins towards the neighbors in our life, sins towards the neighbors in our church. That anger that we'd rather hang on to, the bitterness that we just can't let go, the gossip that is just too sweet that we just have to say it. Those sins, the wages of those sins, the Bible tells us, is death. We who were made from dust because of the wages of sin, we would return to dust. And not just a physical death, but a spiritual, eternal death, an eternal estrangement from God and His goodness forever. But you were dust and ashes worth dying for. You were. You see, there's a confidence in that tax collector's prayer, isn't there? God, have mercy on me, a sinner. He knows where mercy is found. And he knows who God is. That God is a God of grace and compassion, a God who is slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, a God who does not delight in the death of the wicked, but rather they turn from their sins. They turn from their empty, broken ways of vanity and pointlessness, and they turn back to Him. They turn to Him for identity. They turn to Him for sense of purpose and meaning. They turn to Him for hope, for peace, and for forgiveness. They turn to Him and live. And that is our prayer too. We who are but dust and ashes, we're dust and ashes worth dying for. And I know that to be true because there on the cross, the God who made you, who shaped and molded you, died for you. The sins that were in your portfolio, He made them His. Because those sins would render you unpresentable to God. So He made them His. To make you His. So that you, when you stand before God, you would be called a saint because of Jesus. You would be called a child of God because of Jesus. You would be called heaven-bound because of Jesus. You would be called dearly loved because of Jesus. You would be called forgiven because of Jesus. God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Well, thanks be to God. With Him there is mercy. With Him there is forgiveness. You and I have confidence before God not because of our portfolios, but because of Jesus. Not because of who you are or what you've done, but solely because of who Jesus is and what He has done for you. And because of Him and Him alone, we who are but dust and ashes worth dying for, because of Jesus, we do have confidence before God. now and forever. Amen.